Hey everyone, PushingUpRoses here, and welcome to a very bloodthirsty episode of That Time on Murder, She Wrote. By popular request, I am covering the legacy of Borby House. Yes, Borby, which I kept imagining is the alternate reality version of Barbie. I found this episode really unique, but instead of babbling on too much about it right now, I'd like to just dive in and let my commentary speak for itself. Get ready for vampires. We begin our episode with two horny teenagers on a date at the cemetery. The girl becomes apprehensive when she starts hearing creatures of the night sing the songs of their people. He assures her that everything is fine and nothing is wrong.
Would I ever let anything happen to you?
I think we both know the answer to that. They see a hand pop out of an open grave and they run away before they have a chance to see that it's just Sigmund Freud come back from the dead and ready to tell you about your dreams. The next day at Jessica's place, we see she has hired a handyman named Charles to do some electrical work. He finds a note in his toolbox from his late fiancée.
This is from Laurel. She used to do things like that.
Laurel or Yanny? Surely that joke isn't dated and will land with everyone. Much to Jessica's annoyance, Charles is called away by another client named Lawrence Baker, despite not even being finished with his work. He laments taking the job on fixing up the Borby house, an old mansion, and I'm trying to listen, but I can't help but be distracted by this pencil, which isn't so much behind his ear as much as it is being held by his hair. As he's leaving, Dr. Seth Hazlitt stops by. Jess tells him both her electricity and plumbing is obsolete, and it's been one thing after the other, and he's like, welp, that's life, where's the pie? He goes on to tell her about the teens who got scared in the cemetery.
What was she doing there?
I think we both know the answer to that.
Kept rambling on about somebody rising from the dead.
I remember when my husband rose from the dead. Meanwhile, a woman named Molly, who works for a wallpaper business owned by her father, shows up at the Borby house to show Lawrence Baker some samples. Wow, what a great hidden object setting. Hang on a second. Why are there so many ladders? I just counted 5 in this one room. She begins to show him her book O samples, then notices the table.
Excuse me, am I interrupting your dinner?
Oh no, this is our dinner.
Okay, but that's just a flower and a bottle of wine. Also, the butler just lurking in the doorway is creepy and has a particularly menacing look about him. It's like somebody took Niles and Fraser Crane and merged them into a freak. Mr. Baker is smitten with Molly and it seems to be reciprocated. She returns home late where her father is waiting for her.
Daddy, aren't you working awful late?
Aren't you?
Good one, Dad. He's mad at her for seeing Mr. Baker and neglecting her own boyfriend and promptly shames her for staying at the Borby house so late. He then goes back to the angriest sanding ever. Jessica and Seth head to the library. As you can see, Seth has some books to return. Meanwhile, Leon Trotsky lurks behind the books.
So what's it gonna be today, Jessica? More books on poison or man-eating fish?
No, I found enough ways to murder someone to last me for my next 8 books.
Ah yes, way to not sound like a serial killer, Jess. So I want to pause here because I have an interesting tidbit to share. This is Madeline Rue, an extremely prolific actress and friend of Angela Lansbury. Lansbury got word that Rue was in danger of losing her medical insurance through the Screen Actors Guild because she wasn't working often enough, so she created the role of Jean the Librarian so she could bring her back for 2 episodes every year. That's awesome. Jessica and Seth run into Dr. Sorensen, an author who is researching the Borby house and its inhabitants rumored to be vampires. Sorensen believes these tales and Seth does not, and thus they begin debating. Ah yes, 2 old white men arguing, my favorite! We get a quick scene of Dave Perrin, the local mechanic and Charles's son, putting up posters of his missing sister. His fiancée, Molly, is like, we need to move on with our lives because this is about me, and storms off.
Celebrate me!
Imagine having the complete audacity to tell someone to stop looking for their missing sister because it's annoying. Dave then pays a visit to Mr. Baker to invoice him for some car repair, and he is one smooth motherfucker in those deep red glasses.
This motherfucker smooth as hell.
Dave makes a threat to Baker, telling him not to hurt Molly. He's promptly thrown out by Niles Fraser as Molly is coming in, and she is enamored. God, I love a man in blue blockers. The horny teens are back, and they're about to get even more traumatized. Need a hand? Fortunately, this was a false alarm, and the hand was just part of a department store mannequin. These poor kids, though, they're gonna be conditioned to not make out. Dave and Charles also show up on the scene thinking it could have been Laurel, and Metzger tells Dave to try and space out the false alarms on her appearance because it's eating into the station's resources. Meanwhile, Charles and Dr. Baker fight about his work on the Borby house.
I made myself very clear when you bid the job.
And I am telling you for the umpteenth time.
I am out of ladders. Baker wants Charles to remove a bearing wall to open up a room, and Charles is making a huge fuss about it. Apparently the wall wasn't in the original drawings, and Charles insists the wall had to be there since the beginning, otherwise the property would collapse. He demands a lot of money for its removal, and Mr. Baker is like, I wear my sunglasses at night. Once again, Charles ditches the work he promised Jessica for the Borby house and for his work on the sheriff's office. She is not happy.
I'm beginning to get rather annoyed.
Isn't it just like law enforcement to have enough money for revamping their office, but not for finding a missing person?
And it's kind of eating into our resources.
Why you always lying?
A local named Miss Higgins stops by the haphazard office to inform Metzger that she saw and heard someone digging up graves, and then he just shuffles off. This episode is so weird in that there's a lot of short scenes that cut very abruptly. For example, this cuts directly to Metzger telling Dave there's been a burn victim admitted to the hospital and it could be Laurel, and then that cuts seconds later to Metzger investigating the cemetery. This episode is just go, go, go. Quartz. Don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. Yes, this is the resting place of William Borby, supposed vampire. A bulb of garlic has been left at his grave as if someone was trying to ward him off. As Jess is picking out new wallpaper, Mr. Baker wanders in, wanting to talk about buying some real estate from Mr. Holt. He is not interested, and he is still angry about him coming on to Molly.
You're old enough to be our father.
Well, judging from your behavior, I'm not sure you are.
Ooh. Once again, Jessica has to watch these two men duke it out, and once again, she's not impressed.
I'm beginning to get rather annoyed.
Mr. Holt says he's concerned for reasons other than the age gap and Molly's engagement. He ran a credit check on Baker, and there was no record on him. Later that night, Dr. Sorensen outright breaks into Baker's house for, quote, research. He finds a blacked out mirror, which, sure, maybe if you subscribe to the idea that vampires can't see themselves in a reflection, this would make sense, but I just thought it was a cool scrying mirror. He finds a bottle of an unknown red substance with a wolf logo on it, which more resembles a sports logo than an ominous vampire icon. He walks in on him, and the doc whips around and says, I know who you are.
You must be joking.
I'm not joking, bitch.
Luckily, Baker won't have to kill him because he's doing a pretty good job choking himself. So this guy is dead? Metzger is informed that there was a murder at the Borby house. Crane Squared escorts everyone in, and they discover Baker with a large wooden stake through his heart. Well, this is just baffling. We have no suspects. By some miracle, Metzger actually starts putting together an MO without any help from Jessica. He says that even though he personally doesn't believe in vampires, someone who murdered him does, and then shows Seth and Jess the garlic he found. We also learned that Nazier didn't especially like Mr. Baker. This is such a weird murder because if you think about it, Baker hasn't really done anything wrong. Yeah, he was hoarding all of the contractors for his house, and as annoying as that is, it's not a motive for murder. People don't like him because of their preconceived notions about who he might be. On second thought, that doesn't sound weird at all. Carry on. Sorensen is alive and lying about his whereabouts for the night of Baker's murder. Look, I didn't do it. I was busy committing 8 other crimes. Just does a lot of research and discovers that vampires can only be killed with a stake made from ash wood, but the stake used on Baker was fur, meaning that the murderer either tried to stage a death that looked like it came from a vampire, but maybe wasn't knowledgeable enough on the lore and fucked up, or the murderer wants people to think they don't know the lore, so it could just be some average Joe. Sorensen also says he dug up William Borby's grave and found it was empty. Dude, stop digging up graves. What is wrong with you? Despite his weird tendencies, Sorensen provides some interesting information. He says Borby translates to Baker from Hungarian, and that weird, unexplained deaths had happened at the house. Corpses were found with little to no blood, with puncture marks on their neck. Metzger is looking uncomfortable. We also find out that the woman discussed earlier in the burn unit was not Laurel. And I know these two storylines seem so unrelated right now, but I promise all of these loose ends will get tied up. The knot ain't pretty, but it does work. They run into Dave, who is now putting up extra posters explaining that Laurel had been on a boat before she went missing. This sparks the classic J.B. Fletcher epiphany. She and Metzger meet with the Department of Building and Safety at the sheriff's office, and the head is kind of stressed out.
We've looked in all of them, Sheriff. God, I hate this.
Whoa, guy. Are you okay? He's upset because one of the files, the building permit for the Borby house, is missing. We also find out that Peter, you know, the Niles-Fraser hybrid, had entered the country illegally and possibly had a motive if Baker found out and wanted to deport him, but he says that's just not true, and that he heard the confrontation between Sorensen and Baker the night of the murder, even though the doc said he hadn't even met Baker.
Stop fucking lying.
Jess finds some bills nearby typed in the largest font I've ever seen on an invoice, and she realizes who the killer is. She stages an itty bitty sting, just a little tiny sting, making sure to loudly state that another company will be helping to restore the Borby house right away, in front of Charles. She finds him later that night breaking into the bearing wall. This episode actually takes a pretty dark turn. Remember how I said the storyline with Laurel would tie into this somehow? Years ago, Laurel and Charles got into a fight, and she asked for a divorce. Charles saw red and killed her in a rage, then built a wall around her. That's why the wall wasn't in the original drawings of the house. It was built just 18 months prior when Charles was working on it for a previous owner. He then stole the permit so nobody could prove it. Baker insisted the wall get removed, so Charles just outright killed him.
You can't prove any of this.
What do you mean? Okay, let's tear down the wall and see. Charles eventually fesses up to the murder, saying he tried to make it seem as though Sorensen did it by adding little vampiric touches, like the garlic and the steak. Garlic and steak. He had been there the night of that confrontation. These transactions, Jess found, also date back 18 months and proved he was the contractor for the previous owners. I was surprised to see that after Charles was caught, we get a scene of him confessing, which is uncharacteristic of Murder, She Wrote for me. More often than not, the murderer confesses to Jess during the confrontation, but this time we get a confession after the fact. He also admits to abandoning Laurel's boat, so it looks like she had an accident. But do you want to know what actually tipped Jess off to know it was Charles?
I noticed the halyard cleated to the mast. An experienced sailor like Laurel would never have coiled it counterclockwise as you did.
Really? Really?
And then the name of the boat, the word hollow, just seemed to spark my memory.
Are you serious? The word hollow helped you solve this case?
You must be joking.
Well, that's some bullshit, but still, the killer is caught. And what about Baker? Was he a vampire? Metzger is very into the notion, having bought Dr. Sorensen's book. Seth tells him he wore sunglasses and didn't go out into the daytime because he had photophobia, making him extremely sensitive to light and reflections from mirrors. Yeah, he's just a goth. However, this does not explain the missing body from the Borby grave, and then they find this portrait in an old history book from the library.
That's...
Don't say it, Sheriff. Don't even think it.
Best ending ever. I don't think I can recall many episodes from this series that end on a more ambiguous note. This show is very grounded in reality. If there's a case that hints at paranormal interference, there's usually a very logical explanation for it. Really, there's a lot of things that seem like a pretty blatant departure from an average episode, but what it doesn't stray from is the absolute bonkers city this plot was born in. This is one of my favorite episodes because I just love the characters. It's very reminiscent of Dracula and other vampire-related stories, though I will say I feel like the murder of Baker was so unnecessary. And I mean, yeah, most murder is, but this one takes the cake. Keep in mind that Baker didn't know about Laurel. That's not why Charles killed him. He preemptively got rid of him because he was commissioned to take down the bearing wall. Why wouldn't he just hide the body somewhere else while he was working? He was able to hide Laurel while he was working on it for the other owners. Why couldn't he just take down the wall and hide it again? I don't know. I think this guy got a bad deal, even if he was drinking people's blood. They gotta eat. If you have an episode of Murder, She Wrote you are just dying to see me review, please leave a suggestion in the comments. That's how I go about choosing them. Until next time, happy sleuthing. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching my video on the legacy of Borby House. If you're interested in more Murder, She Wrote content, I have a lot, but first I'd like to thank my patrons for their continued support, kind words, and cash money. If you want to support me in the monetary way, please consider joining my campaign, and if not, comments help me immensely. If you want to see Jessica Fletcher own more fools, check out the suggestions on the screen. On the right, I have the very last episode of Murder, She Wrote I covered, and on the left I have another Bonkers Town episode where Jess plays an Irish singer named Emma. They are good episodes, so be sure to check them both out. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.